was the Malay Sultanate, the Malay Sultans of the 9 different states. Today, in the context of post-Mahathir Malaysia, the authority that monopolizes the interpretation of religion of Islam is basically the Malaysian state, the centralized Malaysian state, which basically means that the centralized Malaysian state has an enormous amount of power in controlling and defining the form and content of normative Islam today. So if you're going to have a second moment of a Kaum Muda reform, it's going to be very, very difficult in the context of Malaysia today, because there are no alternative spaces. This is the irony of the Strait settlements, which it deserves to be studied in itself. That on the one hand, it was a colonial enclave. It was colonialism. It was the first bastion of colonial rule. But despite that, because it was governed according to what was basically a universal secular colonial law, it actually opened up spaces for all sorts of groupings to emerge. And I'll end with this. If you look at the history of the Strait settlements, not only did the Malay Muslim and Peranakan Muslim reformist movement begin in places like Singapore, Malacca and Penang, but look at Singapore and Malacca and Penang, and you also notice that the Malayan Communist Party began in these places, the trade union movement began in these places, the Chinese nationalist movement from China found safe havens and protection in these places. The Indian nationalist movement in India, when it came to Southeast Asia, also found protection in places like Penang, Malacca and Singapore. So it was a unique environment in a sense, that on the one hand was the epicenter of colonial power, but at the same time it offered spaces for alternative communities to develop. And many of these communities would later become the very same communities that sought to destroy the colonial establishment. So it's actually very interesting to see that the seeds that were sown to eventually dismantle colonial rule were actually sown precisely in the heart of the colonial structure itself, in places like Penang, Malacca and Singapore, and not in the traditional Malay Sultanates. Because the first generation of nationalists, anti-colonialists all emerged from precisely these places and were products of modern hybrid education. Not only hybrid Islamic education in the modern madrasas, but again, when we look at the other communities, the modern Chinese schools that were developed particularly in Malacca and Singapore, that gave birth to a new generation of nationalist-minded Chinese Malayans. Also the modern Indian schools, for the first time, modern Indian schools that were set up in Singapore, that gave birth to the first generation of nationalist-minded Indian Malayans. So these three places, Georgetown, Penang and Malacca, I'm very proud to say I was born in Georgetown, these three places remain till today anomalies in the overall framework of the Malayan political system. And I think for that reason, when we look at the history of the Kaum Muda, Kaum Tua, the thrust of the reform movement in colonial Malaya at the time, you cannot actually look at it purely in terms of the evolution of ideas, but you really have to study the way in which these political structures actually work, the political economy underlying the whole reform system, and the political structures underlying the whole reform system, I think are crucial to understanding what were the factors that gave rise to early reformist Muslim thought, but also what facilitated it and what eventually destroyed it in the end.
Before I open it to questions and discussion, I can't resist asking you what you think about Ibrahim, Anwar Ibrahim.
Anwar Ibrahim is the product of another sort of colonial establishment. Here in the state of Perak, which was one of the first states to be governed by Britain after the forward movement. Perak was where the 1874 Pangkor Treaty was signed. Island of Pangkor, there. You can go snorkeling there if you want. The royal capital of Kuala Kangsar is home to MCK